Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
In a city where there is World Series fever, there is also plenty of Eagles fever. After a bye week, they've got the Steelers, and the Hall of Famer, the great one, Merrill Reese, joins us. My friend, welcome back. What a year it's been so far.
It's a lot of fun, Steve. It's nice to be on with you. I always enjoy catching up, but it's been a crazy couple of weeks here. The Phillies, I know that the people up there watch the Phillies on television and could just hear the energy exuding from that crowd. It was amazing. As far as the Eagles, it was a good couple of weeks to be off because the Phillies surely had the spotlight. But I just hope the Eagles can come back from where they did leave off, which was being a hot 6-0 football team. But you worry a little bit because you get out of that rhythm and you had something very special, and you hope that you can capture it very quickly.
And one quick note on that. It's interesting you're talking to a couple of the Phillies, around the Phillies. They say, what they love is the energy in the ballpark is something that that they've only experienced when they've been across the street in the football stadium. And they're loving that part. There's something about the energy at Lincoln Financial Field, as you know, that is a little different and special, isn't it?
It is. But it was there for the vet. It's always been that way with the Eagles crowds. They rock the place. There's no doubt about that. The Phillies have been a little more reserved, but the last couple of weeks it sounded like a football crowd.
No question. So let's get to now, obviously, this football team that's the only undefeated team in the NFL. And I'm going to start actually with the defense. Jonathan Gannon had some parts to work with, especially a lot of depth up front. You've now watched it play out over 6 weeks. What are you seeing in that defense that's just a little bit different?
Well, some people, because when you pick up people like James Bradbury and then add him as the other corner with Darius Slay, then you've got a terrific pair of corners. I mean, really terrific. And then you already have a great nickel corner in Avonte Maddox. Then you bring in a safety who has, right before the start of the season, really, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And he has been outstanding. He already has 3 interceptions. He's been solid on the run game. And on the other side, I was wondering where to get another safety and a guy who stepped up really from a reserve and special teams role last year. Marcus Epps came up, and he's played just terrific football. And they've added to their linebacker department in Kaiser White. And the Kobe Dean, who was a terrific player at Georgia and a third-round draft choice, hasn't really played much linebacker. He's more in the learning stage, and he's going to be a great player. But right now he's learning and playing some very, very effective special teams. So you bring in, of course, Davis, who was the number 1 pick, and he's been terrific as a run stopper. Mm-hmm. But usually, as you would know, the defensive tackles don't do a lot of pass rushing in college. Mm-hmm. They set up the wall, and that part of their game evolves later. So he's scared a couple of quarterbacks, but he's still looking to really get a grip on one and toss him to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. But I've just been – they don't let anybody get behind him. It seems like every play from that secondary, and including the linebackers, the ball is always in front of them. Is that fair?
It is fair. It is fair, and it is true. There are very few what they call explosive plays of over 20 yards against the secondary.
Yeah, I mean that means a lot. You want a lockdown corner. Everybody would love to have one. Has Slay developed into that one for the Eagles as the lockdown
guy? Yeah, he's a lockdown corner. Absolutely, he's one of the best. He made the Pro Bowl last year, and he is an exceptional corner. Now he's over 30 years old, but he hasn't shown any effects of aging. He still is quick. He has great ball skills, great anticipation. He's still terrific, and plus he's a guy that they they look to be one of the leaders on this team. He's outgoing. He really adds a lot. And when you speak of leaders, a guy we didn't mention, another linebacker who is not just a linebacker. I mean, he does so many things. He's also an edge rusher at times. And we're talking about Hassan Reddick, former Temple player, and he's outstanding. 4.5 sacks.
Yeah. Well, what has it meant getting Brandon Graham back just as a player, but also his presence?
It's good. I mean, he's not starting, but he comes in and he adds a lot of energy. And you know what? I haven't seen any fall off in his play. I mean, he came back from a torn Achilles, which is tough to do in a year, and shows. But he was actually running around playing golf and doing all kinds of things in the spring. And I saw him, and I said to him, "Are you still rehabbing?" And he said, "No." He said, "I don't have any pain. I'm fine." And he's been playing like a much younger player. He's been very, very good. And also the guy who took a lot of heat here when his play fell off from his expected all-pro level is Fletcher Cox. And he's back playing like Fletcher Cox.
On offense, Brown comes in. He's expected to be a big-time player and has played like a big-time player. But sometimes that big-time player is somebody that also opens up life for everybody else. What is Brown's mere presence meant for Smith, a Miles Sanders, Goddard, everybody?
I'll repeat it. Let me play back the tape from you. He's opened things up for everybody else. Although I like to say, and I've said on the air, that the Eagles don't have a number one receiver. They have two of them. They really do. I mean, and A.J. Brown is tremendous, but so is Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith does the toe tap better than anybody I've ever seen. He is every bit as outstanding as A.J. Brown. They're just different types of receivers. But A.J. Brown, the thing about him is when he gets the ball in his hands in the open field, he turns into running back. He really does. Now, Miles is having another productive year. He's been great. But the thing about Miles Sanders you worry a little about, and this is not a criticism, it's not something that you can control, is that he has not been totally durable in his earlier years. But so far, I keep my fingers crossed, so far he's been fine. I mean, he missed most of training camp with a hamstring or something like that. But right now, he's averaging 4.6 yards a carry. He's got 4 touchdowns, and he's just playing great. And he's made some runs that have helped seal up games at the end. I mean, they were at the end of the Detroit game, they were in danger, and they were in a critical down. And what he did was carry it 26 yards downfield, and that was all, folks. He wrapped it up. So, but Miles Sanders is playing great.
As you've watched Jalen Hurts develop, what have you noticed in his feel for the game, his feel for the offense, but just his general sense of knowing where all the chess pieces happen to be?
Well, you know, Steve, and I'm not blowing my own horn, but with a lot of noise around us, I have Jalen Hurts fan from day one.
Yes,
and
you have.
I like he has everything he physically. People said he has arm talent. No, he has exceptional arm talent. There's not a pass that he can't throw. But what he had to do was refine some of the mechanics. He went out to California, had a quarterback guru, Tom Hand, and worked with that over the summer. So his mechanics are a little more conventional. He's got to minimize his running. You can't run 18 times a game. But what he's learned is to make quick decisions and to read what the defense is doing. And he's been absolutely exceptional. You can see how much the time he has put in. He is somebody who was the first in the building and the last to leave. He is just a absolutely great student of the game, and it's paying off. All that work is paying off, and the players love him. He's got the leadership quality that you look for in a quarterback. He's really terrific.
And you said this from day one. You said certain guys have a presence, and everything you'd seen and read about him at Oklahoma and Alabama told you he was just a different kind of guy. And it's just great the way it's translated over into the pros, because that work ethic has allowed him to make this transition easier than people realized it would be.
Well, that and the fact that here's another thing. You take that natural ability to run with the football and to find the open spaces, and that sets everything up, because then you can swing out the ball to Miles Sanders. They just can't play up. They've got to be aware of the capabilities of Jalen Hurts, and he's also almost automatic on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 because he's got tremendously strong lower legs. I saw last week, I saw Trevor Lawrence in a critical situation sneak, and he didn't get there. And he's a fine young player, but he doesn't have the strength of Jalen Hurts in that lower body. Jalen Hurts can almost not be stopped in a 3rd or 4th and 1.
No question. And the offensive line makes it all pay off. I mean, it's really
they're good. A little bit concerned because Nick Sirianni this morning just answered about Lane Johnson and said as of now he is still under concussion protocol, and he's one of the best tackles in football. You don't want to lose him for any length of time, but I thought with a 2-week break that he'd be back by this week for sure, and maybe he will be. Hopefully he will be for Sunday, but as of today, on Wednesday, he has not been cleared for action.
One final part. I sensed when we started this conversation, you really wanted to see them keep playing. Is that fair? Yeah,
I did. First of all, I don't like the bye week. We only have 17. Well, counting the 4 preseason, now 2 preseason. What is it? 3? 3 preseason games, soon to be 2, I think. But 3 preseason games, so I get 20 of these a year. See, you move into basketball, you move into everything else that you do. You have, I think, 370 events each year that you describe for Penn State. I have 20 measly events, and then they push me out to the golf course. So I want all of my games. When you're 6-0 and things are going along swimmingly, you don't want to stop. You don't, because I have seen teams in the past come back after playing good football, and they just take a while to regain that rhythm, that certain something that they had. Now, under Andy Reid, for years, he went with a long stretch where he had wins after every bye, and then that changed in the last couple of years. Nick Sirianni is a guy who seems to have the pulse of this team. I didn't think they were ready for the start of the season. I'm going to be honest with you. I was worried about that opening game in Detroit, because the practices are efficient, but they're short. They're they're no more 2 days. They work out in the morning, and they practice for maybe an hour and a half, and there's no real hitting. I mean, they didn't wear pads all that much. There was one day, I think, where for 10 minutes they tackled to the ground, and that was it. And in those 3 preseason games, Jalen Hurts, I think, had 6 snaps, and that was it. And none of the regulars played, except for the young players who were needed a little extra work. But your offensive line, sat and watched. That was it. And I thought, how are they? And I watched Hard Knocks, where I watched Dan Campbell take the bullwhip over the Lions and tell them every day they've got to hit, they've got to get ready for the season, they've got to be a tough team. I want this from the beginning. And what do? The Eagles beat. I thought they could go to Detroit, and suddenly it's going to be culture shock because one team's going to be beating the stuffing out of the other. Well, it worked in reverse. The Eagles won that game, and they've won every one since. So you cannot. It's a new NFL. It's a new NFL, and I guess I obviously guess that Nick Sirianni knows exactly what he is doing, and this team is responding. So maybe my worries about regaining the rhythm will go away and mean nothing. And plus, I don't mean to minimize Pittsburgh, even though they're 2-5, but somebody went on the radio today. I heard them driving in, and they said, "You got to remember that the Eagles have had an easy schedule, and they don't have that toughest schedule coming up." And I thought to myself, wait a minute. If you take that NFC right now and put a bunch of opponents up there for the Eagles to play, it really shouldn't matter, because how can you make a tough schedule? Because the guys that we look at as the perennial winners every year. Those tough teams, Green Bay, they're a mess. Tampa Bay, they're a mess. I mean, these teams are, and the NFC East I used to call them the NFC least, and they've turned into the NFC beast. So it's really a big change, but nobody's that good. To find good, really good. Well, Minnesota's 5-1, and the Eagles dominated them on a Monday night. And then you look over. There's two over in the AFC. Certainly, Kansas City is really good, and Buffalo is really good. But again, teams that you expected to be much better really aren't.
Well, as you called it, the new NFL, and in the new NFL, there's one unbeaten. Keep having fun, Merrill. Keep having fun.
At least for the next 3 days.
Yes. Well, let's just keep it rolling because it's a lot of fun to watch.
Okay, and I'll take care of this if you promise to bring me a win over Ohio State.
You know what? Why not? I'll promise that. I have nothing to do with the winning and losing, so I can promise anything.
That's right. I'll be watching that game and listening to Steve Jones.
And I'm going to be watching the Steelers-Eagles game and listening to Merrill Reese. How about that deal?
That's a deal. That's a deal. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.